Get started with the intro, and thank you for joining us. So hello everyone, thank you for joining us for Workbar Live. My name is Chelsea Hildreth, the Events and Partnerships Manager at Workbar. It's our pleasure to welcome Mary Clavieres. She will be presenting to you today on using change as a catalyst for business growth. To start, just a little bit about Mary and the company. Mary is a consultant specializing in change management and transformation for both individuals and global corporations. With a degree in engineering and 15 years experience in Fortune 100 companies, Mary utilizes her expertise to help leaders and teams navigate change by leveraging cognitive diversity. In 2017, Mary founded Brief Transitions, and Mary also co-hosts the Fearless Business podcast. She'll be going into both of those in a little bit. She has been featured in Forbes, Business Insider, Romper, Sway, and other media outlets. In 2019, she was the recipient of NPR's How I Built This Fellowship Program. So we're very, very happy to have you with us today, Mary. Just a few notes for our guests. If you're new to Zoom webinars, it would be best to have your screen in presenter mode. Please type in any questions as you go in the Q&A box or the chat box. We'll make sure to get to them throughout the presentation or at the end. And with that, we will turn to Mary. And thank you again for being with us today. We're very excited to have you. So I know you have a presentation prepared, so I will just let you dive in.
Sure, great. Thanks so much, Chelsea. Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. So as Chelsea mentioned, my name is Mary Clavieres. I'm the founder of the Transitions Collective and Brief Transitions. And today we're going to be talking about change. So a couple of things that we'll cover. What you'll learn is about why change may not be happening as quickly as you want it to. That's a pretty common theme for people. How to navigate change based on the way you think. We'll get into some details and tools that you can use to get yourself unstuck and drive better decision-making in your business. So a little bit about me. As Chelsea mentioned, I spent about 15 years in pharmaceutical manufacturing. I worked in process improvements and transformation and operational excellence. What does that mean? It means that I would go to manufacturing sites and help them improve their processes. So sit with people on the shop floor and look at how the equipment was running and see how we can make things better, more efficient for them to make their workday better. Now, change is something that can be difficult to navigate. So getting people on board to do that is something that I have quite a bit of practice with. From there, actually, with the birth of my first daughter, I went through a significant change for myself. Pretty personal story, but my friends, if anyone here has children, my friends told me that I'll need the mesh underwear from the hospital and to take some home because you won't be able to find more. It's true, I needed them, I ran out and I couldn't buy them. And I got frustrated that there was a lack of supplies for women in a time that's very pivotal, both personally and could be professionally as well. So I started Brief Transitions. That was how I first kind of thought about, hey, this was a big thing for me. It can be a big thing for other women, and how can I support this? Then in 2018, I was juggling corporate and running Brief Transitions. And I finally said, okay, like it's a lot to be juggling everything. And I was looking for more flexibility in my life. So I took the leap and left to work on Brief Transitions full time. Through there, I had another transition, as if we have a lot of business owners on the call today, you know, when you're working on your own building your own business, there's a lot that you're doing by yourself. You're figuring out systems, you're working with, you know, trying to build your network and also get things done for your business. And from there, I said, okay, there's got to be other people going through these same things, and actually founded the Transitions Collective as a community for what started out as for moms building businesses, because we're all going through a pivotal time of having kids and also trying to build businesses. And so you can see a lot of change coming up as a theme for my own personal and professional story. And that's how I am where I am today. So how does that relate for all of you? So I'd like to first talk about what is change. So depending on how active you all want to be, you can type in the chat if you feel on what does change mean to you? And I'll read some of those off as we go. But change is really in its basic form, you're doing something differently than as it stands today, or if you would leave it in that way. So I want to talk about how change feels, and I have a little bit of a quick activity for you. So why do we find change challenging? I'd like everyone, now I can't see you, but I trust that you'll try to do this. I'd like you all to cross your arms in front of you, cross your arms at your chest as if you were, standing around somewhere or something. Great. So cross your arms. Okay, now uncross them and cross them the other way, whichever way you didn't just cross them. It feels weird, right? I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but usually it feels uncomfortable for people. And if I told you to stay there standing that way, you would eventually uncross your arms and put them back the way you first had them, because that's what you're used to. So change is a lot like that. And it can be on a very small scale, like crossing your arms, or it can be on something very large, like leaving corporate or making a big shift in your business, going through something like COVID and everything else. So it can happen on many different scales. So why do we find it challenging? There are a lot of reasons, but some that I just started to touch on are you're used to the way you're doing things. It's comfortable. You find it hard to make decisions, so it's safer and easier to stay where you are. You can feel alone in the process, so there's no driver to make you, move forward in a bigger way. You might be short on time, so really can't feel like you're making the progress you want to make, or you feel stuck. Sometimes you just feel stuck and you don't know how to work through that. So there's a lot of different reasons that this may happen for people. And really what it comes down to from a science perspective, to give you some background, there's biological reasons and psychological reasons why it might be hard for us to change and why we find it challenging. So biologically, when you have a challenging event, something that's, a change in your life, whether it's real or perceived, your amygdala sounds the alarm in your brain to say fight or flight. So how are you, you want to stay safe, you want to stay comfortable. So as that keeps activating, you have this discomfort and you just move towards your survival behaviors. Basically what it means is we're wired to resist change. It brings us stress and anxiety, and really at the end of the day, who wants to deal with that? Let's just stay where we are. But that's okay, there's ways around it. Then on the psychological side, if you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, really what we as humans crave is safety and certainty. We want to feel safe, we want to feel like we belong, and a lot of the time change makes us go against these things, right? So it makes us naturally not feel safe, feel unsure, and it's impacting our whole system and our brain. So how can we move past that and have it help us and our business? All right, the psychology and the biology together, you make what's called the SARA model. So you go through these feelings of shock, anger, rejection, acceptance, and hope. And as you go through, and experience different changes or get stuck in the cycle of change, you keep repeating these over and over. And the timeline may vary for everyone depending on what your experience is. You could even think back even over COVID, what were the states of mind that you went through when everything first happened? I'm based in New Jersey, so we shut down right across the river from New York. So we shut down pretty quickly and severely all at one time. So there's a lot that goes into that curve and those feelings. So just something to be mindful of and understand where it comes from, and that it's okay. It's okay if you struggle with change and you're not just ready to go all the time. But really understanding this and knowing the background will let you move forward in a better way, and you can combat that with the steps, the tools that we'll go through next. Okay, so how can you thrive through change? So really the way to make lasting change, what people usually do, and you can think about in your own experience, what do you usually do when you want to change something? What people usually do is they pick a different action. So they say, okay, I want to work out. I want to lose weight. So I'm going to start working out, um, 5 days a week. And then they want the different results, right? So they just pick an action. They say, okay, I'm going to go problem solve right away. And this is what I'm picking. And so then I should see some results. But it doesn't really work like that. If you pick something like that and try to change, for example, a habit based on your action, you're eventually going to give up on it, right? You're going to give up on the action and you're not going to see the results. The way to really find lasting change is to first change your experiences. So force yourself into new experiences that can then change your beliefs and drive you to have different actions that will lead to lasting results. So for me, so beliefs is a big one, because if you're not having another experience that shifts your beliefs, like your basic fundamentals of like why you're doing something is not going to change. It's not going to be enough to say, I'm going to take this action and get a different result. You really have to feel it from a place stronger than that. So that's what this is explaining here. All right. So I'm going to go into talking about now, how can you use all of that and how can you use some information about yourself to get unstuck, to drive change and make better decisions, whatever the case may be for you personally or professionally. So this is what's called a whole brain thinking model. It was created by Ned Herrmann. He was a mechanical engineer with General Electric on the leadership team. And he created this software and a assessment tool that helps people to understand how they think, what their thinking preferences are, so that they can navigate change and it has other benefits too around communication and project management, all kinds of things, but how you can better understand where you prefer to think, which quadrants of the brain, so that you can take action, not only using your preferences, but look at your whole brain and see what's missing and how to combat that and use that as well. So there's 4 quadrants. The first quadrant is the analytical quadrant. So that's all of the data and the what behind what you're doing. So for your business, it's the financials, it's the data and analytics, anything that's like fact-based and quantitative about how you're running your operations. There's the B quadrant, which is the practical side of things. It's really the implementation part. So the details of project management and planning, administrative type of work, anything that's like the logistics of running the business. There's the relational quadrant, which is C, and that is the people-focused quadrant. So it's about the feelings, it's about the customer, depending what type of business you have, your client interactions. If you have a team, it's working with your team members and involving them, all of those types of things. And then the D quadrant is the experimental one. That's your long-term vision, your creativity, and your purpose and your why. All of that sits in the D quadrant. So even as I've been saying these, you may think like, you may relate them to yourself and think, okay, yes, I'm totally an analytical person, or, I am not practical at all with the details. I just don't like those. That is common for entrepreneurs, especially. It depends on the person, but anyway, you may gravitate towards some of these versus others. The point is, even if you have preferences, how can you look at change through the lens of all 4 of these so that you can have the most complete approach to what you're doing? So what does that mean in an example form? I'm going to share some ways that you can work through this. So here's an example of a client profile. This is someone, she's an entrepreneur. She runs a community actually, and also does coaching. And we did an assessment of her profile, and it shows a few things. It shows that she is very strong in the creative space and also very strong in the people and the emotional space. These together are what people are usually familiar with as like the right brain, the right side of the brain. The blue and the green here are considered left brain. So she's very strong in the right brain. And she came to me, her specific case was around, she wanted to hire, she was struggling in her business. She was struggling with the implementation side of things, which can be common. And she wasn't really sure what to do next. And she was trying to hire someone. And what we talked about was like, okay, well, where are you today? So measure how you think. Where are you right now? And what are your biggest challenges? In her case, it was very clear, both from her profile and what she was saying, that, she was also struggling with metrics. So metrics and implementing of projects. So we came to talk through, okay, well, what can she do around that to get the help that she needs? The way we look at it is, when you want to look at a whole brain approach for change or anything else, I suggest you first look at the A quadrant, so the data, and you take a look at what is going on. So what's going on right now in your business, or what is the problem that you're trying to solve? Then you move over to the D quadrant and you say, why am I doing this? What is the purpose? Does it match the long-term vision of the company? Is it aligned in that direction? And making sure that the data supports that. Then you move to C, to the people quadrant, and you think about who can help you with this. So who can help you to drive this change, or who are role models that are doing something like you want to do that you can look up to in some way and see how they're doing it. And then the last part would be how. How are you going to do this? What tools are you going to use to implement? So we looked at her situation through those lenses to come up with, she was looking for someone that could help her with really some of these left brain activities. So not just some of the day-to-day, website updates or whatever, but also the metrics and what data is driving her through her purpose. So how could she have someone support her with that? Another example, this is just to show you a different type of profile, someone that's stronger in the data and the implementation and the people part, and not as much in the why. So how can you look to incorporate more of whichever quadrants aren't as strong for you? Because what happens is we're creatures of comfort. We talked about it before. So when you're working through your business and your projects, you're going to stay to the things that are fun for you, right? So if you're someone that, that loves data and implementing things, you're going to look at data and you're just going to go do it, right? You're just going to go implement. You're going to say, okay, this is what I want to do. And so here, I'm just going to go do it. But you're not necessarily looking at why you're doing it or how it's helping your customer. If you skip the part with your customer, are you really left with something that's going to be helpful for your business? Maybe, maybe not, because you really need to, and probably not, because you really need to incorporate them into what you're doing and understand why you're doing it in the first place. To really have lasting change, you need to be looking at all of those different parts of it, not just picking one or the other. So measuring how you think is the first part of it, so you can see where can you go from here, and which parts do you maybe need support with, or do you want to grow into in some way, stretch yourself into the other quadrants. And I have some examples of that too. So the next part of it is to build diverse teams. So in the case of the first profile that I mentioned, she did end up hiring someone to help her with some of those other activities around processes and metrics. But really, really here we're thinking about building diverse teams in terms of cognitive diversity and how people think. It's most comfortable when you hire people. So you want to hire someone to help you with something, to drive some type of change in your business. It's common to hire people that think just like you, because that's who you can relate to. You say, oh, I have a great connection with this person. Yes, they'd be perfect. But what you really usually need to do is hire someone that has different thinking preferences than you, because that's what will stretch you into the other quadrants, stretch you into using the other quadrants of your brain and having that show up also in your business. So, and the reason sometimes it's hard to do that is because with diversity can come conflict, right? So it's not as comfortable to communicate, for example, between two quadrants. I'll give you a short example. Most CEOs or business owners have a pretty strong creative side. So they can be pretty high in the yellow quadrant with like a long-term, like big vision and purpose and something that's bigger than them, right? And if they're talking to someone on their team, say an admin, that's really focused on actually doing the implementation, for example, the CEO will say, you know, okay, I have this great new idea. Here's what I want. And the admin will start to ask all these questions. Okay, well, what about this? What about that? What about this? And the CEO is like, stop raining on my parade. I just want to implement this big cool thing and let's go. And the admins, you know, and it creates conflict. It can be applied to a lot of different things. That's just one general story, but it's really about, as you bring those diverse perspectives into your team, you also need to be willing and able to communicate to them in a way that's, you know, works for everybody. So actually, it's not the topic for today, but I do also use the whole brain thinking model for communication. So you talk about what's happening, why it's happening, involving the people on your team, and how you're going to get through it. It's the same structure that can help and apply to a lot of different things. The next part is learning from others, right? So I talked before about how you might stretch. So an engineering firm, for example, very data heavy, data driven, they might stretch into the red quadrant, which would be uncomfortable for them because it's opposing quadrants on the graph. They might stretch by talking about customer stories, or, you know, pulling in some of that feedback and perspective from their customers to feel what's going on and to recognize the impact of their company. For a team that's using an app to stretch, it might help them get more organized and aligned across the board, you know. So there are technical things that you can implement too for your teams. Nonprofits, typically very, very red, very people focused, customer oriented or purpose and mission oriented, may not be as strong with the data side and the financials, but you can't run a nonprofit without having the data and the financial piece. So having someone on the board or someone on the team that's very high in the blue quadrant, a CFO or otherwise, would help put more focus on that area so that it's not missed. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to miss any of these, because then there will be a gaping hole in what you're doing. And the last one is with the pharmaceutical company, you know, to drive innovation and change, because they too can get stuck in the ways that they're doing things. What activities or creative ways can you bring everyone in to brainstorm to drive new changes in the group? So those are some ways that you can tie in with other people and learning from other people in other quadrants. Okay. So the fourth one, so this is what I want to leave you with today in terms of how can you build your own plan for change and how can you navigate change for yourself and your business. This can apply. I have a community, I'm running a strategy day next week with them, and we're using this model even in there. So it can apply to building your business strategies. It can apply to a specific project within your business. It can apply a lot of different ways. So ask yourself, what's the payoff? You know, what you're doing, or what is the challenge that you're facing, and pull the data to show and paint that picture of what the story is telling you. Then you can look at why is this a problem, or why do you want to fix it or change it, to really get to that purpose. Who can help you? Again, who can help you, or who are some role models? Or even what are ways that you can involve your customer, depending on the type of business, you know? Can you get customer feedback in there that would help you navigate the best way to go about it? And then how will you actually implement it? So are there things, you know, tools that you can use or processes that you can set up to make it fully implemented. Because you don't want to, a lot of the times in the corporate world, there's a lot of people that focus on these top two. So they look at, okay, we have a problem. What's the problem? Here's the data and why we want to fix it. And the executives on the team kind of go in a circle, what, why, and they never really get around to talking to the customer or talking to the team members and really implementing it in a sustainable way. So it's important to look at all four of these so that you can really navigate and have something that's long lasting. That is, I believe, all I have for today. Yes. So I'm happy to answer questions and I'd love for you to stay in touch. I do have actually a workbook. So it's a business checkup for you. It'll go through a little bit of how you can make it's an assessment first of your business, not a full profile of what I put in here, but like a mini checkup for your business, and then plans for how you can use the 4 quadrants and navigate and build your own change plan. So I'll send that to and with Chelsea's information as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And one of our users did want to know, I know you just said the plan book, but they want to know if they'll get a copy of the presentation.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay, awesome.
I can send that as well.
I did have a question. As we are changing, and you kind of touched on the 4 different quadrants, and you talked about, CEOs versus admins. Is there a tool or a way that you can, especially on kind of strategic planning teams, that you can make sure that you have someone from each quadrant so that your business is more diverse?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's a few things. While it's not necessarily used as like the profile shouldn't be used as like a hiring tool, but when you do have a team, you can do a team profile actually, and it will show you where everyone is. So I actually do that for companies where it overlays. So instead of an individual report, like one of these, it will overlay each person's quadrant, like it'll summarize a little kite for them and it'll put them wherever they are the most. And you'll be able to see how much like thinking diversity you have in your team. And depending on where your team sits, there's different things you can do in the workshops to get everyone kind of stretched, more whole brain, or for example, like when you're running meetings. So if you know that you have a team that's very green, very implementation focused, but you want to be doing a creative brainstorming session, there's different things you can do. So for example, B quadrant people with thinking preferences in the B quadrant, they typically like structure and order. So it's a matter of, putting the agenda in place ahead of time. So having a clear agenda with say time associated for when they're going to do the different parts of it to make them more comfortable, because they may feel really out of place just showing up to a meeting and saying, hey, we're going to do some brainstorming. So as you know where your team is, you can adapt in different ways to kind of facilitate and stretch everyone, but also make them feel comfortable. It's about meeting them where they are. So ways that you can do that. Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. And then I guess just from your presentation, and I know that there's a lot here, and it'll be sent out after, but what are kind of the biggest takeaways that you can offer our attendees today?
So I think it's very important to when you're navigating change, to know how you think, measure it somehow. So really pay attention. I mean, even if you don't have the full profile or, whatever, you can contact me about that, but like, just take stock of like, okay, which parts of your business are you most comfortable in? What do you usually gravitate to? And think about it in terms of the quadrants to see where you stand right now. Okay. And then it's about how can you stretch and bring more diversity of thought into what you're doing so that you can have a whole brain approach to change. So really then the next tip I would say is whatever you're doing in your business, again, like if it's a project or a strategy, ask yourself what, why, who, and how for everything. That I think is the biggest takeaway, because it means that you're forcing yourself to think about it through a few different lenses.
Okay. One of our attendees would like to know, what if you are 50-50 partners with someone who doesn't see this type of model as important?
Oh, interesting. Okay. So a friend of mine is 50-50 partners with someone, and he purposely had his future before they were partners, had him take this assessment too, to see, he purposely wanted to see like the differences, and he's very right-brained, and he ended up partnering with someone that's very left-brained so that they could have the full approach. For someone that's not into this, without context, so usually people are not into this type of thing if they think it's a personality test or a personality assessment. I'm happy to dig into it more separately, but it usually means that they're probably pretty blue and analytical and really data-based. And this particular assessment is actually backed. It's a validated system and backed by, and it was created by an engineer, but backed by science and data. So it's not just the fluffy feel good. So if you're talking to someone and you want them to do something like this, first think about where they might be. So that person, again, this is just, I'm just kind of thinking here based on one little snippet, but they're probably very data oriented. And it's about meeting them there. So so you focus on the facts and the figures of it. So what does it do? How it's science-based, what it will help them see, like sticking to facts, versus someone that's maybe sitting in the emotional quadrant where you connect to them more on the feeling side of things. Yeah. So, but if you have a 50-50 partner, a tool like this is great because it's scalable to individuals, pairs, and teams. So when you look from a pair perspective, it'll overlay where your two profiles are, and you can see, are both of your I didn't put a team profile here. I should probably do that next time, but you'll see, are both of your profiles sitting left brain? Are both sitting right? Are they covering all four? It can be very powerful, and it'll also show you where to meet someone, because even if you both say you're both data in some ways, you might be data on different points. So is that really the best place to communicate from? I know that's getting into maybe more detail, but for someone that doesn't, say believe in, like, again, personality test type of things, this is a science-backed assessment. I would follow the facts for them. Follow the facts.
Excellent. And they said helpful. Thank you very much.
Great. Okay.
Okay. So I think that this is a wonderful presentation. We're going to send out it to everybody, and including the people that registered but just maybe couldn't attend. We have another question. When working with clients, what have been the biggest obstacles that you have seen?
Well, I'd say stretching into the other quadrants is challenging for people. Mm-hmm. But usually when people are ready for a change, like, they have to be ready for a change. They have to be ready for something to be different for them to really see the change. But it's hard, like, no matter which profile it is, say it's this profile, for example, it's hard to stretch into an area that you're not as comfortable in. So the challenge is, they can go to any quadrant, but the challenge is, how do you go about stretching? And that's where you have to learn, like, tools and applications to get you into those other areas, or to recognize, so that then you can hire other people to help you. For a lot of entrepreneurs, there's kind of like a sweet spot of, like, what a tipping point, really, a tipping point of wanting to hire someone, but maybe not being financially ready, right? So there's this uncomfortable space of like, I want to hire someone, I need to hire someone because I'm overloaded, but I can't hire someone yet financially. So that's a big challenge I've seen of how do you navigate that space until you can hire someone, or how can you make it work to get yourself to be doing some of the work that maybe you don't want to do as much.
Right. Awesome. Okay. And I think that's it for the questions. So again, thank you very, very much, Mary. This is absolutely wonderful. Can not wait to get this out to everybody. And we will be sending out a survey with all of the slideshow and some resources that Mary's providing. She'll also be reaching out to you as well. Please feel free to get in touch with her if you have any questions. A huge compliment, Mary, because we have someone that has, I think, attended every single Workbar Live, and they said this was great, best one yet. So,
great.
yes, and I know that I think you're on every single one. So, great compliment there. So, again, thank you so, so much. Everyone, just get in touch with Mary whenever you have a chance, and we'll be sending out her information shortly after this.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. And it was nice to, well, not see, but speak with all of you today.
Have a good one, Mary. Thank you.
Thanks.
Attendees, thank you as well. Bye.